Alright, good evening ladies and gents and welcome to VSR Phoenix Season 7 Round 9 here from Pest County, Magyarország, Hungary. Here for the second half now, leading into the championship. After a dramatic last round in Bathurst last Wednesday, saw the victory of Tyler Vermaak in the new Ferrari right behind the first driver out onto the field here today. This is VSR Chris, formerly known as Old Man on Track. It was a very exciting round in round 8. Now that brings us hot on the trails of another hour-long race right here at the Hungaroring. Of course, I am Regan Clark. You join us, of course, as I've just mentioned, from the mighty Hungaroring GP circuit. What started as Bernie Ecclestone's endeavours to get a Formula 1 race inside the USSR at the height of the Cold War culminated in the first ever Grand Prix held behind the Iron Curtain. And in the current day, it is one of Hungary's largest. A mighty 14 turns and 2.7 miles of FIA Grade 1 produced what most drivers describe as a go-karting sensation when it comes to track design and flow. We've seen plenty of good races over the last couple of months here at the Hungaroring. Chief among them, our most recent, was NLRL Sunday League's penultimate round right here, where we saw a very climactic clash between the two championship rivals Labe and Abate. But today we're here in round 9 of the championship at large, with 7 more rounds left to go. Of course, our next round next week takes us into another endurance race, this time at the circuit, the World Circuit Misano Marco Simoncelli, and then Alton Park the week after. We watch on board with VSR Chris. He was recently just passed down at the chicane by Tyler Vermaak, last week's race winner with Ferrari. We'll watch on board with Vermaak as he starts off his flying lap. We get a full comprehensive rundown of this track, then from the perspective of Tyler Vermaak on a very refreshed run of his championship. Of course, made the debut back in round 4. It's been continual improvement ever since. So out through turn 1, this parabolic open hairpin right opens up on the run down into turn 2 and open hairpin left. So good contrast in the first sector brings us into a sharp right-hander in the imminent turn 3. We've seen plenty of drivers try for side-by-side action down into this section of the track. This brings us to a very short run between turns 3 and 4. This blind, sharp left-hander over crest here at turn 4 has caught many drivers out and can cause a bit of a heart-in-the-throat moment for quite a few drivers. Very unstable through that section of the track. Round turn 5 we go then. Open hairpin left brings us into a chicane here at turns 6 and 7. We've seen some side-by-side and some clashing action at this section of the track where things tighten up. We get into the go-karting section, as most drivers describe it. Here into sector 3 we go. Round turn 8 now into turn 9. Turn 10 follows shortly after. Thick and fast do the corners come at you in this section of the track, bringing us to turn 11. This sharp right-hander bringing us down to another short straight here. This is one of our major attacking spots between turn 11 and turn 12. If drivers can get good momentum, they can surf it into a move. Right here at turn 12, a sharp right-hander brings us into 2 opposing open hairpins, one to the left, one to the right. Here at turn 13, then down to turn 14. We watch with Vermaak then at the end of his opening lap for qualifying. The number 22 was on pole position in Bathurst last weekend. We'll see what the South African can do down towards the line. Funky Fish crosses for a 147. Vermaak crosses for a 144.3. So already hot on the trails of an interesting opening to qualifying. Chris does 1.5 seconds off the beat. Dollar up 2.4. Just Boris, the championship leader, only 0.2 of a second away from Vermaak. If we take a look at the qualifying predictions for today, you can see that Hayden Puttock has his return to Honda after the Circuit of the Americas race 2 weeks ago and is predicted for pole position with a 143.281. Vermaak is predicted for 3rd behind Just Boris. VSR Pete's predicted 4th with Wade Nate 5th. ETE Giles in 6th. VSR Chris 7th. Rafing 8th. Twiglet 9th. And Grizz in 10th position. Looking at balance of performance for Hungary, the Lexus RCF of course stays with its 40 kilo reduction. Audi's R8 stays with 22. The Ferrari 488 loses 17 kilos. The Honda NSX Evo losing 14. The Lamborghini Huracan losing 5. The Aston Martin V8 Vantage for the first time this season remains neutral, no weight gain or loss. The BMW M4 gaining 6 kilos. The Audi R8 LMS Evo 2 gaining 10. The Ferrari 296 on screen here gaining 15, and that's one of 3 cars with that much weight on, as the 992 Porsche 911 GT3R and the Ford Performance Mustang GT3 all gain 15 kilos. The heaviest of the bunch, still the McLaren 720S, with 20 kilos added here for Hungary. So we take a look away from Vermac's perspective as we go to look with some of the other drivers making their way down through turns 13 and 14. We saw behind was the number 982, which was VSR Twiglet. This is the perspective of VSR Chris, formerly known as Old Man on Track. Down towards the line he goes in the number 28 BMW. From the line there, third fastest at 1:45.033. Dollar up behind him, goes to 11th fastest. And we want to bring your attention to a situation at the moment, a sad bit of news that crossed our desk earlier on this week. If we go on board with one of the drivers here to be paying their respects, let's see if we can find them. This is one of two of them, Taz, also running a livery, and we'll explain why in a moment's time. As we go on board here with Just Boris, you'll note that Boris is now running a new number as well, and this comes alongside the sad news we received earlier this week. A good friend of both TRTN in its beginning days as TRR, and a good friend of a lot of the drivers in this paddock, who Darren 93 sadly passed away a few days ago. And we wish our best wishes and consolidation for his friends and family in what is no doubt an incredibly tough time. A very trying time indeed. And in respect to that as well, Just Boris will be, of course, running the number 93, who Darren's old number. And along with a few other drivers, is running a black and pink livery in memoriam to who Darren 93. And for us here at TRTM, we knew who Darren through our time as TRR. He was one of our first drivers in the sprint series so long ago now. And he and many like him brought this unique energy to the grid. He was a good laugh and a good guy to be around, so we will miss him very, very dearly. In memoriam to him as well, and out of respect for him, his friends and his family in this difficult time, we'll be holding a minute's silence on the opening grid here for round 9 of the championship. We can see here Just Boris making his way round turn 14, running the number 93 in memoriam to his best friend. And does a 1:43.967 there, so roaring stuff by the number 93. The McLaren, despite 20 kilos on, is absolutely not down and out of this race. We'll catch up with him later on. VSR Pete running that stealth number 77 down towards the line there. He was predicted for 4th in qualifying as he gets across the line, goes into the top 10. VSR Grizz not too far away from him. Alongside one of the new drivers for this race, Hin Hin Pappy, the 777, competes in the silver category in the yellow and black Ford Mustang. Daily Boy crossing the line from behind there in a brand new livery. The white, yellow, and I believe that's chrome red there. A very striking ensemble of colours on the number 97. Hayden Puttock in the 313, second fastest at the moment with Honda on his return since the Circuit of the Americas round 2 weeks ago. So we'll see what he can do in this round. Of course, he was one of the very few drivers to have put Boris through his paces when both of them were in very comfortable positions in the championship and on track, that is, especially with Puttock really just beating the brakes off that McLaren at the Circuit of the Americas. It's no easy feat to go toe-to-toe with McLaren on a good day, let alone on a Honda. That was Regent there, just to the side of the track. The number 420 Ferrari. Elite Cassie made his debut last week and was a very remarkable performance. A great comeback drive with a drive-through penalty from the race start. And he managed to recover that to 4th. It was a very, very admirable drive by the number 98 Mercedes. They're currently 4th in this qualifying session. 10.5 minutes left to go before we get on to the grid for round 9. Monkey Fish crossing the line there for 16th. Oatsy in the other Aston Martin recently changed to the VSR nameplate. We explained that in the last stream as well. We wait here with Oatsy exiting turn 14 we go. Cross the line, goes up 5 positions then from 18th to 13th on that last run. So we can see improvement there out of Aston Martin. They're on neutral weight for this race, so that is a first in this championship with the pit bop balance of performance. To see that neutral weight gain come in is a bit of a striking thing then for Aston Martin. I think I was asked a few days ago by, I think it was by Tyler Vermac, what he would ask me, what is my pick really for the top 5 GT3s in this game? And it did take me quite some time to come up with a comprehensive answer for him, and I definitely stand by my conviction to put the Aston Martin inside that top 5. It is a real jack-of-all-trades car. It's super accessible for newcomers to this game, newcomers to GT3 racing. It is a really easy car to pick up and play with. Setups are aloft. You can find them for pretty much every track in the game, for wet and dry, aggressive and soft. You know, there is just so much compatibility that the Aston comes with from standard. Not only that, on a wet race, it is arguably one of the best cars to be in. We saw that back in Nürburgring in the NLRL Sunday League finale round, where Hayden Puttick drove it to absolutely domineering victory in the final round of the championship. But wet conditions is not what we're dealing with today here. It's a bright and sunny day here in Magyarod, Pest County in Hungary. Track conditions are looking nominal for this round indeed. In the lead up to this, we did have changeable conditions in the pre-race practice rounds. Mild rain came in at the midway on free practice 2. For qualifying, things are right as they should be for these drivers. Looking around the field, see Blue Frog as well, also just about to finish off their their qualifying run. I was thinking of the championship when I was looking here at Blue Frog. We'll take a look at the class by class rundown and then the full rundown of the championship before we get to the end of qualifying. So starting off in the bronze category, VSR Smiler, formerly known as Evil Smiler, leads by 3 points from Antion. Abok in third with 75 points, has a secure third position at this leg of the championship against Dollar Up in fourth position. Looking up into silver, things are much, much closer. It's 6 points that divides the lead between Lexus's VSR Twiglet and Aston Martin's VSR Funky Fish. 230 to 224 points, and then 14 points divide Funky Fish from Oatsy. So an Aston Martin 2-3 at the moment. McLaren in fourth by a single point there. VSR Pete with 209 to Oatsy's 210. Twiglet has a narrow lead of the Silver Championship. Things are looking to get very, very interesting. Blue Frog himself is in the top 5. Not too far away from superseding position. Needs one good race to put himself back in the championship run. And for BMW, that could not come any sooner at a track like this, as it looks to be in a very confident P7. Lastly, looking into those gold standings, it is still a far and away led affair by the 999, now number 93, of Just Boris with 395 points, though those points counts has stagnated for him since Bathurst with his only DNF of the season. ETE Gilles has dropped 1 position by 1 point to Soviet Mario, who now is up into second position in the number 26. VSR Chris, slowly gaining ground, is now in 4th position, only 25 points away from a podium, and only 9 points ahead of Fast Fanatical, who was looking to be in the early stead for the championship fight, but after a myriad of disappointing results, has led him astray from the championship run here in round 9 of the championship. Regent, on his debut into gold not too long ago, has already made leaps and strides here, only 10 points away from securing a top 5 in the championship, ahead of Fast Fanatical. Tyler Vermack quickly making strides, is now 5 points ahead of Tommy, who made the leap into gold not too long ago. And then getting a look into the overall runnings of the championship here with 5 minutes left to go in qualifying. Blue Frog just coming down to the line now. So Boris with 395 points, Soviet Mario with 256 points, a single point ahead of ETE Gilles with 255. In joint 4th position is VSR Chris and VSR Twiglet with 230 points to their name. VSR Funky Fish with 224 points makes 6th position. It's a very narrow top 10 when you look at it across all classes. Fast Fanatical with 221 points is only 3 points behind him in 7th position. Regent only 10 points behind him in 8th position, as we see there, and off from Aussie 207. Oatsy in 9th with 210 points, a single point ahead of VSR Pete with 209. So very remarkable stuff then inside the championship standings. Abok into the pit lane then. We'll go and load up our timing charts yet again. Millard now with Porsche there in the number 16. Just Boris then leading this qualifying session by a narrow 1/10 of a second gap to Hayden Puttick in the 313 Honda. Elite Cassie in 3rd with the Mercedes number 98. Has had a very, very strong opener, to say the least. Back in Bathurst is keeping the ball rolling now into Hungaroring, and is only 0.02 of a second ahead of Tyler Vermack. Of course, been around since round 4 of the championship. Started off with Lamborghini. Ever since his move to Ferrari, has seen a modicum of great success since his departure from Lamborghini. The Huracan was doing him no favours, as we saw back in Brands Hatch, diminishing results. Diminishing performance. The results actually were still on the climb even when he was with Lamborghini. It was continual improvement by the South African since he joined back in round 4 of this championship. You could see this growing discontent. There was definitely better results on the horizon for him when he was with Lamborghini, but the machine was holding him against the opportunity to get those results. It was just too unstable, too twitchy. That's ultimately what governed his decision to move over to Ferrari, and you saw last week in Bathurst just exactly what the effects were when he took a commanding victory and a brilliant pole position lap we saw back in Bathurst. So don't rule them out of it just yet. Tyler Vermaak down towards the line, crossing it for 3rd. So now ahead of Elite Cassie in the Mercedes, down into 4th. Vermaak could be on the charge for another pole position. It's not too far away at all. 0.3 of a second is all that stands between him and the front row. As for Hayden Puttock, it's ever closer. It's under 0.2 of a second, but just over 1. Puttock has got even smaller a gap to close if he wants the lead going down into turn 1. And for Just Boris, despite the weight gain on his car, 20 kilos, has done very little to deter his confidence coming into this race. Of course, now sporting the number 93 in memoriam to Hungaroring 93 on the tragic news of his passing this week, and running the brand new livery there, the black and pink, in homage to Hungaroring 93's car. He's got a reinvigorated drive since a series of disappointing results. 2nd in the Circuit of the Americas race, and then DNF'd in the 1 hour race last week in Bathurst. A reinvigorated Just Boris looking to come back swinging into this championship. Still leading by a very wide margin, but just cannot afford now as the laps, as the rounds start to become finite as we head into the second round of the second half of the championship. Wow, we just cannot speak today, can we? The second half of the championship is just cannot afford to keep making those kind of mistakes. So down across the line, no improvement so far. We saw Twiglet not far behind him at all, go up to 14th position, leading the silver category with Lexus. It's been a remarkable story, is that of VSR Twiglet. Started off the season as GTR Twiglet in the 96. That Lexus has been a continual focal point of this season. It's just such a bizarre machine to see this late into the meta for ACC, and yet to see drivers like Twiglet command it with such almost effortless endeavour. And not only that, commanding it to a class lead against an ultra competitive silver field is just nothing short of brilliance from the 96, and you can only hope for more, really. 7 more rounds where we get the opportunity to see that Lexus sing. We've no idea what Twiglet's plans are for Season 8, whether or not he'll stick with Lexus or if he'll be moving up into Gold with a new game plan. But that Lexus, we really do hope, for the sake of just the viewing experience of watching that thing careen around tracks with effortless abandon, is going to stick around for seasons to come. Speaking of careening around, the new heavyweight on the block, the Ford Mustang, has definitely got a lot to deal with coming into this round. One of 3 machines to be 15 kilos indebted with the balance of performance coming into this round. The others being the Ferrari 296 and the Porsche 911 992 GT3R. Ford has got their backs against the wall coming into Hungary. This is not their best track, mind you, as manoeuvrability is absolutely paramount on a track like this. Very twisty, very turny. Not a lot of open straights where that 5.4 litre V8 gets to sing and gets to show us what for with its superior straight line speed and final drive. Ford are really going to have to dig deep for a solid result here. They're just outside the top 5. Wade Nater and ETEG are 6th and 7th, and then down in 10th is Soviet Mario. As we come to the end of qualifying then, Tyler Vermaak finishes the session with a hopeful 3rd. At the moment, that could still change with other drivers looking to take that off of him. Hayden Puttock still in the pit lane, so Just Boris is going to claim another pole position here. Is he looking to make this race win number 7 of this championship? 6 wins in, of course. We take a look at the previous winners over the course of the last 8 rounds of the championship. He's accounted for over a good solid 60% of those. That is a mind-blowing statistic. 6 consecutive race wins before it was undone at the Circuit of the Americas by Hayden Puttock in the Honda and Tyler Vermaak in the Ferrari at Bathurst. Could it be number 7 on the horizon here for Just Boris in the brand new 93? Only time will tell. ETE Geels crossing the line then, putting forward into the top 5 ahead of VSR Chris. So very, very solid stuff for Ford and very solid stuff for ETE Geels. All the best of luck then on that race start. Wade Nater, another series hopeful here in the number 169 Ford Mustang. Rounding turn 14 he goes. What will he be capable of from 7th position? It's not a lot in it to get towards that top 5, let alone the top 3, let alone pole. It's still going to be 7th though, reluctantly, at the end of qualifying for Wade Nater. We'll get a full run of the grid after our minute silence, remembering Hungaroring 93 here on round 9 of VSR Phoenix Season 7. We wait here to see the grid form up and the minute of silence begin. We will, of course, let you know when it does begin, and we will return to you in a minute's time when it does begin. Of course, our condolences and thoughts and prayers are with his family and friends during this very difficult time. There are a lot of people in this community, in the sim racing community on console, that are affected by this loss. He was a friend to many, many people, including us here on TRTN, all the way back in our time as TRR. So we are really feeling the impact of this loss. We can only imagine what those closer to him are going through in this time. We wait to see then the grid form up for round 9 of the championship. It's taking a little while here, so do bear with. So before we continue on to our rundown of the grid, we will be holding a minute's silence in memoriam to Hungaroring, beginning now. That was the minute silence in memoriam to Hungaroring 93. Now, continuing on to the grid for round 9 of the championship. Just Boris starts from pole position. Alongside him on that front row is Hayden Puttick in the 313 Honda NSX. Tyler Vermack makes 3rd, with Elite Cassie NL in 4th position. ETE Geels in 5th, VSR Chris in 6th position, Wade Nater 7th, Blue Frog 8th, Tommy 9th. Rounding out the top 10 is Soviet Mario. VSR Grizz in 11th alongside FR77, otherwise known as Regent, makes 12th position. The row behind them comprised of VSR Pete and SN Queese in 13th through 14th. Taz MCFC, otherwise known as Nico, starts from 15th alongside VSR Twiglet in the number 96 Lexus. VSR Antion makes 17th alongside new signing Hin Hin Pappy in 18th position, and the 777 silver category Ford Mustang. Behind them is the row of VSR Otzi and Chris MCK08 in 19th and 20th position. 21st goes to VSR Funky Fish ahead of VSR Daily Boy in 22nd, Indian Goat in 23rd, Aussie in 24th, Dollar Up in 25th, Smiler 26th, Outbook 27th, Millard 28th, and Rafing in 29th position. Another record show up here for round 9 of the championship, matching the record of last race at Bathurst. 29 drivers in all will go on board with the leading pair. We're given the 20-second warning, and we've been shown up a little bit in our talks about the weather during qualifying. We thought it would be bright and sunnier conditions. It was for qualifying, But by no stretch of the imagination is that a reflection of what we're seeing right now here on the race start. It is a very soggy track indeed. You can see standing water on the sides of the track there. Could be a very dangerous race start, to say the least. Any of you who've seen a wet race before, I think best example I could give, the 2021 Hungarian Grand Prix. A bit of a slippery start, and that led to quite a bit of chaos on start. This is no different in the world of GT racing. Do expect to see some pushing, do expect to see some shoving, and do not be surprised if there's a big wipeout going down in a turn 1. It is by no stretch of the imagination easy on dry. It's not going to be much easier in the wet here. So taking us away on the formation lap, it's just Boris in the number 93. Following him, Hayden Puttock in the ever-eager number 313 Honda NSX. Right behind the pair of them is Tyler Vermaak on a reinvigorated drive with Ferrari, riding on the highs of his successes last week in Bathurst, Australia. And then new signing Elite Cassie, who made his debut last round, wowed crowds with a fourth to last back to fourth recovery drive. May not have the same issues as last time. This is if he can keep himself out of the eyes of the stewards and doesn't pick up another drive-through on start. Absolutely do expect that one to be fighting through the crowd. ETE Giles makes an incredibly competitive top 5 with Ford. It's looking to be very exciting here on round 9 of the championship. Just Boris gunning for gold in the gold category, looking for win number 7 after 2 down and out results. Hayden Puttock looking for win number 2. Same story for Vermaak. This could be very exciting to see indeed. McLaren versus Honda versus Ferrari versus Mercedes versus Ford in that top 5. Absolute bliss then out of that qualifying session. Let's see where it translates on the race start. It's looking incredibly exciting. It's going to be very tough to capture all 29 drives down in a turn 1. We'll do our very best here, though do bear with us on the frankly terrible menu navigation that ACC's given us over the years. We keep our attention right now on what is slowly forming to be a 29 driver grid, the front row of it, or perhaps the front 3 rows will be keeping a very close eye on down into turn 1 on lap 1 of this race. An hour ahead of us then here at the Hungaroring. So cruising down into turn 14 we go then. 2 drivers side by side and all the way down to... Actually, so it seems we have 27 drivers starting on the grid, with 2 starting in the pit lane. That's the number 97 and the number 16, VSR Millard and VSR Daily Boy. But without further ado, we get down towards the line here for round 9 of the championship here in the Hungaroring. And without further ado, we are green and racing here in Hungary. A fantastic start by the front row already. Just Boris and Hayden Puttock filtering into single file traffic. Elite Cassie having a charge down towards turn 1. Same story for ETE Giles. Tyler Vermaak tries to hold off against Cassie there on the run down into turn 1. You can see how incredibly close it is with all of them. This is the perspective here of VSR Twiglet as we see quite a few drivers run wide down through turn 1. Looking back up towards our top 5 here, you can see that Hayden Puttock defending from Tyler Vermaak allows Elite Cassie the leeway to get through. Behind them right now, ETE Giles watching on as Elite Cassie now filters up into 3rd, Vermaak down to 4th. That could give Giles the run he needs there as he gets side by side with the Ferrari up towards turn 4. Could make that into 4th position, I believe just about manages there. Grand stuff in the start of this race. Blue Frog and Chris as well side by side. Grizz going wide out of turn 4. Taz there almost down to the back of the top 10. Of course finished 10th last race and is looking to now battle with Grizz and Regent. We get around the chicane for the first time. Looks like very few messes there. That's Wade and Nate are now emerging from behind our current perspective. The Mustang with minor damage there on his driver's side. Actually, that's passenger side. These are left-hand drive cars. VSR Twiglet down in 20th at the moment. We'll go back up on the story of our front row. Hayden Puttock clinging to the back of Just Boris, with Elite Cassie pushing him around turn 12. An incredibly competitive top 3 at the moment. Where could that lead? We do have yellow flags. That's down in turn 9. The number 11 and the number 97 filtering through. That's racing in the background there as well. Back into green flag conditions. We're back on board now in the fight for first place between Hayden Puttock and Just Boris. A big snap of oversteer by the Honda there out of turn 14. Remarkable recovery by Hayden Puttock there to keep it in the clear and narrow, but that's definitely allowing a much better run of things between Cassie and Gilles. A little bit of contact between the pair of them, the Mustang and the Mercedes, clashing heads here for third. Right now, we're watching the battle for first as Just Boris starts to open the taps on that McLaren, trying eagerly to get away from the Honda. Ooh, running very deep into that was turn 2. That leads into turn 3, so losing out the position and therefore losing out on the battle of first. Hayden Puttock now looking to nearly drop down to 4th. ETE Gilles is getting a very good run on the way into turn 4. It's going to take it around the outside of the Mustang. It's been a very grand drive already by ETE Gilles. Hayden Puttock having to pick up the pieces there. 2 mistakes too many on lap 1. Barreling down into turn 6 and 7. Tyler Vermack nearly tried his luck there for a move up into 4th himself. Couldn't get the leg up on Hayden Puttock's Honda, heading down into sector 2 and 3. We're looking further behind there as we can see the very close battling. As a matter of fact, you can see drivers spilling over the lines to make this possible. Let's see if we can try and get an onboard with what's going on here. It's Taz and it's Taz and Regent, and he's in at the wall. Oh my word, what has gone on there between the 420 and the 996, I should say, as well. What on earth happened in that moment? See here the perspective of Soviet Mario right ahead. This is the driver we were trying to find the onboard with, as you can see in the background there. That's Antion. And I believe that might be Antion and Blue Frog, if I'm not mistaken. Indian Goat actually was the one caught up in that, not Blue Frog. I saw the flash of purple there, mistook it for the BMW. Soviet Mario we're now watching on board with, just for the time being. The number 93 still leading this race, so Just Boris still out in front. We're watching, though, what looks to be a move up into 9th position on Grizz here. Soviet Mario getting a very good run in the Mustang. This is its one opportunity to shine. As you can see, Dollar Up waiting on the exit of the pit lane. Now, I think that did stun a few people. Namely, I think that was Wadenator in the back who's dropped 3 positions there after a very deep run down into turn 1. But up into 9th goes Soviet Mario. Looking back up into our top 5, Hayden Puttock 4th. Elite Cassie now moves up to 2nd. ETE Gilles to 3rd. So let's see if we can have a look at what's going on at that front row. Slip and slide here for a lot of these drivers, really struggling for traction. You can see especially out of turn 4. Skino in the pit lane there. I believe it may be a delayed start for the Aston Martin. He was meant to join us in qualifying, sadly couldn't make the appearance. He's also sporting the Memoriam colours for Hungaroring 93, the black and pink. We're watching here Elite Cassie. Started the last race he was in from 4th, had to immediately jump to the pit lane. Now not constrained by penalties. He's really been able to open the taps on that Mercedes, the 98 in 2nd. Barreling down into turn 13, a bit wide there. So ETE Gilles, we may have wrote Ford off a little too early here. We did talk at length about their 15 kilo penalty. We do have yellow flags as well. We're just watching here the perspective of Essen Creasy runs up to what appears to be, yes, that's VSR Chris, who ran off at turn 13. We're back in the green flag conditions as we head into turn 14. Chris trying to hold off Oatsy and the white Aston Martin behind him there as we head out of turn 14. Try as he may, the BMW's got great straight line speed, but already in the side draft is the Aston Martin of VSR Oatsy. Looks to have him for breakfast on the run down into turn 1. Can he make that move stick? Going the long way around is the BMW. Will he have the better of the 2 exits? Yes, he does. So very valiant stuff despite his accidents there for VSR Chris to try and hold on to 12th position. Could he elevate this into an 11th position run as he starts to close the gap on Wadenator? Further up ahead, up in the 10th, is VSR Grizz, who ran very deep round turn 2. We do want to try and go back on board with our top 5 as things look to be getting incredibly close in the battle for the race lead. Seems that despite that raring start by the McLaren, Just Boris has not been able to elevate that just yet into a domineering lead. You see just the amount of drivers struggling, clawing the ground for grip out of turn 4. That's going to spin someone. It's a guarantee at this point. There's an area of next to zero grip. We're watching on board with Chris here as he views the battle of 10th position. VSR Grizz in the white McLaren versus VSR... that's VSR Grizz versus Wadenator. Almost mistook him for VSR Otzi. Was reading the timing charts instead of looking directly ahead of me to see the giant blue and white Mustang. VSR Otzi, though, is right behind. Let's not make any mistake of that at all. The Aston Martin still clawing at the back of the BMW for the look at 12th position very, very soon. We'll catch up with them in a moment's time. We want to see what's going on inside our coveted top 5. It has been incredibly close with these guys all race long. And it looks to be getting ever closer in the topic of the battle for second. ETE Gilles closing the gap down to Elite Cassie. Hayden Puttick is not too far away himself. Same story for Vermac. So this is the big 5, ladies and gents. Maybe I wrote Mercedes off too soon in my assessment of what I would say is the top 5 GT cars. You're looking at least 3 of them. I put the Mustang in the top 5 because it's had one of the best career potencies on ACC since its debut. It reminds me a lot of the BMW, which is also on that list. I'd be willing to discuss that over the course of this stream, but I think we're seeing now that being re-evaluated as we see a new top 5 emerge. Of course, 3 of those cars still staying in here, the Ford, the Ferrari, and the McLaren, but we now see the emergence of the NSX and the Mercedes. Heading down into the chicane, Just Boris from Elite Cassie and ETE Gilles. Gilles has had a fantastic race so far. 51 minutes in. Oh, no, 51 minutes left to go. We're 9 minutes in. And Gilles started 5th. Has elevated that 2 positions already on the drivers behind him. Vermac and Puttick. To now put himself in the stead for a front row finish. If he can keep that ball rolling. Of course, 1 mandated pit stop per driver for this race. 51 minutes left to go. We'll be 20 minutes away from our earliest look into the pit stops. I'll give you the rundown of the running order in about 50 seconds time. Heading out of turn 14. This is absolutely the battle of second position going on. In fact, I would even hazard a guess to say this is the battle of third, with Puttick really eyeing up third at the moment. You can see them sticking in the wet line to cool those tyres down so they can drive ever more aggressively onto the dry line in the lap to follow. The 93 there causing what appears to be some kind of malfunction when the 98 runs very deep round turn 1. We're back into the battle for second position here, looking to go the long way around. Here's the Mustang. Oh, contact there between himself and the Honda. Hayden Puttick's in at the grass. Spun around, but he's back up into 5th position. Let's get a look at that on the replays there. So heading down into turn 2, we can see that Gilles committed to a run around the outside on the Mercedes. And Putt just tries to squeeze his way through. Can't find the room there. Gilles violently cuts back in on him. I don't think he realised he was even there at that point. And he was onto the grass. Now we're looking at the fight for third position. Gilles v Vermac. Vermac has had a very potent drive with Ferrari thus far, looking to make it win number 2 with the Maranello firm. The Blue Oval hunting down its first win this season in the hands of ETE Gilles. Last time Ford won a race here on TRTN was, I believe, back in Indianapolis in the NLRL Sunday League. That was in the hands of Martijn van Manen, also driving the 57. So this could be the lucky number for Ford, or not. There goes Tyler Vermac up into third as we go barreling down into turn 13. Seems to be, bar that one incident between Puttick and Gilles, it seems to have been fairly close to respectful, clean racing. I think that is an isolated incident going forward. Heading down the straight. So we'll go on board with another battle going on at the moment. Taz v Millard The battle of 20th position. Taz also sporting the Memoriam colours. Black and pink there in Memoriam of Udara 93. Millard, though, looking to give him some grief down into turn 13. Oh, can the Porsche find the space for it? The number 16's on the inside. Is he going to find his way back to the inside? No, he'll be to the outside on the run to turn 14 we go. Very good defence there by the Mustang. Just knew the value of positioning himself there in the penultimate corner, knowing exactly where it would place him on the run into the final. See further down the line as well. Plenty of battling behind the top 20 positions at the moment. Very captivating stuff to see. We're looking back around the order here in the top 10. This is Wade Nater at the back of that top 10. Chris, Oatsy and Twiglet all for company. Very, very close to one another. As we get nearly 15 minutes into this race, it has gone by ever so quickly. Now looking at the running order, Just Boris leads this race at the moment by only a single second to Elite Cassie. Tyler Vermack now up into the podium positions ahead of ETEG as Hayden Puttock makes the top 5 with the fastest lap. Soviet Mario in 6th with Blue Frog 7th, VSRP in 8th, Regent 9th by only a 10th of a second. We'll be going on board with that battle very, very soon. Right now, Wade Nater in 10th, could be 11th very soon. The sudden approach of VSR Chris in 11th position, starting to weigh heavy on the 169. Further down the order, Oatsy, Twiglets, SN Queese in 14th position, Grizz 15th, Antion 16th, Smiler 17th, Abok 18th, Aussie 19th and Taz in 20th position. Millard 21st, Funky Fish 22nd, Hin in 23rd, Indian Goat 24th, Rafing 25th, Daily Boy 26th, Chris MCK in 27th, Dollar Up 28th, Skino in 29th position. So back on board this battle at the moment. We'll be quickly moving back to our fight inside the top 5. It's been one of the most captivating performances we've seen all race long. We also have here the battle for 7th position on our hands. VSR Pete versus Blue Frog. The McLaren slowly closing the gap to the BMW on his run down into turn 1. As far as I've been led to believe, the rain is here to stay for this race. No present signs that weather is going to subside. Course on the grounds that it does. Definitely going to be a treat for these drivers here, especially when it gets to those conditions that they can kick those wet tyres off, though I don't see that happening anytime soon. Regent going deep into turn 2. See, the grip is not getting any better for these drivers at the moment. VSR Pete still clawing at the back here of the BMW for 7th position on the run into turn 4. It's getting ever closer. Just noticing as well, it's not been the greatest starts to the race for Hayden Puttock. He was on a very competitive front row start, has now fallen to the back of the top 5. He's still got a comfortable gap between himself at the moment and Soviet Mario in 6th. But that has not been the start he's been hoping for, especially given the fact that he's got great confidence on wet starts. We saw back in the Endurance Series in his time with Euro Titans, wet starts really his bread and butter, so it's just not been able to materialise in the Honda, where it's been able to materialise before in cars like the Aston Martin. That really does stand a testament to just how solid the Vantage is, though, in wet conditions, where a lot of these cars are struggling. Very few Astons are having the same problem. Nonetheless, we're still on the fight here for 7th position. Pete v Blue Frog in what has been already a very captivating battle inside the top 10. The BMW now trying to stick it into the wet line to cool those tyres down. Pete is not letting go of his slipstream on the run down towards turn 1. You can see Regent not just a passive observer to this anymore. He's right on the back of the pair of them. Following not too far away is the 169 of Wade Nater. Out of turn 1 we go, down towards turn 2. VSR Pete could be looking for a move to the inside. I think he was just covered off there. Going around the outside, is running it deep into turn 2. That's going to invite Regent to come and play very, very shortly as he gets a very good line on the inside towards turn 3. The gap now sitting half a second either side of it for control of 7th position from the perspective of 8th. Up through turn 4 we go. This is the icy zone here, right on that right-hand side of the track. Is where there's an area of absolutely zero grip. The number 97 is in at the pit lane. Now on an emergency stop. Down into the chicane we go. You can see the McLaren having to dodge the inside of those curbs where the BMW can plough straight over it. Going on board the dash view here. You can see just as it slips over the white lines, there is no grip at all. The BMW is skating on ice. Even now, in between the white lines, it's really struggling for grip in worsening conditions, mind you. You can see in the background there is a very close battle going on at the moment for 11th between Oatsy, Twiglet and Chris. Right now, though, it's Pete v Blue Frog we're watching on the run down into the last corner here, turn 14. And then we'll be going back on board the fight inside the top 5 to see what the state of affairs is as we've crossed over 15 minutes into this race. We're nearly at 20 minutes in. It has gone by like a breeze here. An incredibly fast race today here at the Hungaroring. See what happens here. 0.3 of a second faster was Blue Frog on that last lap. See Chris trying to hold off Oatsy for a position down the opening straight. We'll cut away from the battle of 7th for the time being to see what's going on inside the top 5. Hayden Puttock here, right on the back of ETE Giles out of turn 3. Further up the order, Vermac and Cassie. 3rd and 2nd, Boris leading by now 6 seconds into this race. Very, very good stuff. A good recovery since last week for just Boris. The Bathurst curse not following him here into Europe as we head back to the Hungaroring circuit. You can see the same story as what we talked about before when it was the battle of the McLaren and the BMW, Pete versus Blue Frog. Now we see it with Puttock v Giles. The mid-engine cars just cannot take the curbs the same way the front-engine cars can. They lack the stability over that section of the track where their centre of gravity is going to make them snap much quicker in than the front-engine cars. You can see the Mustang can absolutely annihilate the curbs in that middle sector where the mid-engine cars have to tiptoe around those more raised areas of the track in case it upsets the balance on their car, which is very easy to do now given the factor of much less available grip on track, courtesy of the rather British conditions here in Hungary, I must say. Heading out of turn 14 though, despite having to tiptoe around those curbs, it's done very little to deter Puttock's endeavours to get up into 4th, looking to begin the comeback drive to 2nd by the end of this race. He's got 41 minutes to do so, 10 minutes until the earliest available pit stops, I would say, at this current time. Giles runs deep into turn 1, that invites Puttock in, so we're going to stay on board the battle of 4th position here. Side by side is Giles and Puttock on the run down towards turn 2. You can see running... Oh, that wasn't actually running deep, that's holding off the line. I got confused for a second there, was Abok. Puttock trying to switch back Giles there, but both of them being backed up behind the BMW as it swerves out of the way to let both of them through. The 27 there of VSR Abok in the bronze category. Up through turn 4 we go. You can see that massive snap of oversteer kicking the back end around on the Mustang again. It has turned the Mustang very quickly into a bucking Bronco for ETE Giles. It is a very, very angry Mustang he's having to deal with here in less than favourable conditions in the Hungaroring. See, hugging the inside curb there on the run out of turn 11. Very well done by Puttock. He's now starting to notice a rhythm in the Mustang ahead of him. He's waiting for his opportunity to strike now. He's in striking distance every single corner. He's just having to hold short round turn 13. Knows he's going to have a very good opportunity on the run down into turn 1 if he can stay as close as he is now. Otherwise, the Mustang is just going to get away from him. He might not be waiting any longer as he's now to the inside on a very quickly narrowing gap on the inside of turn 14. Now as we exit that final corner, he's going to hold on to his line. He knows that swerving is going to sacrifice some of that straight line speed that he's just accrued out of the last corner. The Mustang's still getting away from him here, but what can the Honda do? As it runs down into turn 1, the Mustang runs it deep, but to the inside line goes the Honda on a withering gap. Just can't find the grip out of turn 1. This is brilliant stuff in the fight for 4th position at the moment. Giles with a masterful display of defensive performance here against Puttock with fantastic reflex on his offensive performance. This is just grand stuff to see. Ford versus Honda. Run out of turn 3. We're barreling down to that icy turn 4. Will we see the same troubles hit Gilles again? He just decides to run it wider and sacrifice some of that momentum rather than wrestle that Mustang into correction, potentially run himself out of road and out of grip. So barreling down into the chicane, very deep for the Mustang, has to cut the second part of the chicane there. Stewards will be taking note of that one. If he keeps that up, it could be a stop-go for the Mustang very, very soon. 38 minutes left to go. Puttick is buying his time here, waiting for his opportunity to strike, and he may have that chance now. Around the outside we go, round turn 10. Brilliant by Hayden Puttick. Let's get a replay on that as they go charging down into turn 12. At the moment, we'll stay on board the recording of it. We'll let you know if anything changes as we exit turn 12. They still hold position here. So this is the replay around turn 10. Hayden Puttick just absolutely swings for it in the Honda. Brilliant stuff. He holds on to fourth then. He's going to continue his fight now with the reinvigorated momentum on that Honda. As now E.T. Gilles peels into the pit lane. So we thought we'd have at least a few more minutes before we saw someone take a dive for the pit lane. Gilles taking the early initiative on tyres that are very clearly out of their depth now in worsening conditions. Hayden Puttick secures fourth position for the time being. Looking further up the order, we're a row up now to second and first. You can see in clear view our first and second position drivers. Just Boris in the 93, Elite Cassie in the 98. Cassie has had a very ambitious entry to the championship. Entered back in round 8 in Bathurst, as we mentioned, started from fourth and had a drive-through penalty, of which they served almost instantly, and then began the long crawl to victory. Going to fourth, recuperating that loss, getting a net neutral finish, and what was a remarkable comeback drive worthy of their driver of the day acclaim that we gave them last round. And now, without the sort of red tape of penalties in play, he's really been able to spread his wings here and fly in that Mercedes. Currently up in second though, but don't take this too lightly. Don't take it too lightly, that's all I'd have to say. It's a brilliant performance thus far, but it can go very quickly south. Right now, though, that gap just stuck in a stalemate, anywhere between 2.5 and 3 seconds between the top two. Cassie's finding time in that first and final, but that middle sector practically belongs to McLaren and just Boris at the moment. Looking around the field here to see where our next battles are coming from. You can see Otzi and Twiglet have exchanged positions now. Twiglet up ahead of the Aston Martin. Otzi trying to clamber to action here on the battle for what is looking to be 9th position. 3 mid-engine cars in the fight for it. Make that 4 actually. Ford versus BMW versus Lexus versus Aston Martin. That's a brilliant sight had ever I seen it. Let's get a look at that. That is grand. Look at that. Wadenator leading in this 4-car battle. This is the fight for 8th position from the perspective of VSR. Chris looks to the gap on the inside, but that quickly closes away. Now it's a straight line battle. BMW, Lexus and Ford are all the kings of straight line speed in GT3 on Assetto Corsa Competizione, but what can they do on the run between turns 14 and turn 1? Twiglets to the outside at turn 1 at the moment. This is very much so the fight for 8th position still on the books here. Twiglets looking for 9th though, as he continues his run around the outside. That Lexus is clambering to the inside line at turn 2. Look at that. It's like watching a naval battle. These are proper heavyweight cars here in the wet. Chris, though, doing his very best here in defensive performances, holds on and continues to secure 9th position. Further up ahead, though, Wadenator has now caught up Regent, who is a new competitor into this fight. A mid-engine car now enters the fray in the land of the giants here at this leg of the race. Nearly halfway through already. It has been very, very quick today. I would still very much so say we're in that fight for 8th position. This is now a defensive fight rather than offensive. Now in the ballpark of Old Man on Track, now going by VSR Chris in that BMW. Twiglet right behind him, Otzi also on him. 3 VSR drivers giving it everything they've got here inside the top 10. It is a real sight to behold. Further up the order there, Wadenator. I believe something did direly happen for Regent to have dropped behind all of these drivers here. I didn't pay too much attention, sadly, and that's on my part to have missed out on that, but something did go wrong almost instantly for Regent, dropping down to 11th at the moment. Was just way too captivated on this now 4-man fight. And this is just absolutely spectacular stuff to see. You can see that the 22 and the 313 are very close to one another. So that fight for 5th position is definitely back on the books at the moment. Actually, this is the fight for 3rd position there. We did have a timing chart error when we first read that out. That's only 4/10 of a second between 3rd and 4th at the moment. But we're watching the fight for what is now 5th position, as we did jump up a few there passing the pit lane. Chris v Wadenator v Twiglet v Oatsy. Chris now holding 5th, Wadenator 6th, Twiglet 7th, Oatsy in 8th. Twiglet giving lights there to Wadenator. He's backed right up onto the Mustang. Still holding 5th here in the defensive performance by VSR Chris. Wadenator dropping there through turn 5. That could invite Twiglet back up there, side by side on the run down towards the chicane. We're still watching from Chris's perspective. We'll quickly see what goes on there. Where on earth does Wadenator go? He's facing the wrong way on the run down into the chicane. There was obvious contact between himself and Twiglet on the exit of turn 5. We were watching from Chris's perspective here. The cameras didn't show everything. They were side by side, and the last time we saw them, we saw just as the cameras went away, there was some kind of rub. The Mustang sliding the wrong way down towards the chicane. What on earth had gone on there between those two in the time we saw them, between the cutaway and towards the chicane? Absolutely mental stuff. Oh, we just caught there. That was minor contact between Grizz and Abok. That was just in trying to unlap himself. VSR Smiler, formerly known as Evil Smiler, in the 32. In 10th position, a very respectable place right now. Now we must factor as well, there are plenty of drivers who have now gone into the pit lane and served their mandated pit stop. Chief among them at the moment, VSR Millard in 21st in the Porsche. Making his way down towards turn 1. You can see behind him there the 3-man fight now. What was 4 becomes 3. VSR Chris, VSR Twiglet and VSR Oatsy. Chris MCK08 in the number 81 Porsche. We're starting to see a resurgence of the 911 here in sort of in ACC in general. We're seeing plenty more teams and plenty more drivers now teeter over to what Stuttgart's offerings are. And the Porsche is slowly making a comeback. We had a very brief renaissance of it during the time of the GHR XCC. We had teams like Orion Racing and IGF running Porsches in that championship, and we're getting pretty decent results in that time. But then pretty much after that, we stopped seeing, in most series we were covering here on TRTN, the Porsche be a factor in these championships. But right now we're seeing plenty more people teeter over to what Porsche can offer them. Regent has already taken their pit stop. They're in 19th position at the moment. And the number 420 reinvigorated there. Looks like no damages on that Ferrari. So when talking about that incident that we missed out on earlier from him, could have been just as simple as an off-track incident, sliding away and therefore dropping a few positions. Tyler Vermack now got the leg up on Hayden Puttick. 22 ahead of the 313. Up in the 3rd at the moment, half a second between the pair of them, but Puttick jumps to the pit lane first, inside that top 5. So looking around the field, where are our next fights coming from? Taz is quickly gaining on VSR Racing here, the number 11 versus the number 996, also sporting the Memoriam livery. You can see big step away there over the rear axle on Taz's Ford Mustang. Now, of course, finished in this position last race in 10th. Had a very long-winded battle for 9th position. Came apart on the last lap, but still took home a top 10 finish on debut. Can he deliver on another top 10 in this round is the question I have on my mind. You can see a new signing as well, also with Ford. That being Hin Hin Pappy in the 777, also hunting a top 10. Speaking of Mustangs, here's Wadenator, now in 18th position. Funky Fish right behind him, also having took their pit stop. Chris MCK08 looking to unlap themselves from 24th position on the run down into turn 5. And here is the new driver, Hin Hin Pappy, the silver driver on his debut here in round 9. Coming back after a hiatus, so I'm told. Down into the pit lane he goes in the 777, the sort of bright fluorescent yellow and black there, striking colours on that Mustang. So we're back on board what is now the fight for 4th position. They've stayed out longer than everyone around them at the moment, bar that top 3. And it's elevated them into a not only top 5, but top 4 fight. Could even be a podium fight for a brief while here if they stay out any longer. We're over that halfway mark into the race. And we're watching the perspective at the moment of VSR Twiglet in the Lexus. It has been an incredibly ambitious drive by this one all season. Now to see it culminate in yet another spectacular fight is brilliant, brilliant stuff. Still not 100%. Oh my goodness, what has gone on there for VSR Chris? That's a free position, had ever I seen one for VSR Twiglet. Let's see if we can get a replay on that. So it was coming out of turn, that was turn 12 for Chris. You can see he skated over the white lines to the far edge of the track. No grip there on the left-hand side of the car, but there is grip on the right. Drags the whole car around into the barriers. Oh no, that is not gone well for VSR Chris. That's as any an indication to go into the pit lanes, of which I believe he has now done at this time. 1.5 seconds stands between Oatsy and Twiglet at the moment. The Aston and the Lexus now on their own at the back of the top 5. We'll go back on board the state of affairs on that front row. We pan away from these two. Just Boris still leading this race now by 5.6 seconds. That gap is continuing to open. It was 3 seconds the last time we observed it. Now nearly double that. It's been a very, very controlled, very measured drive by Just Boris. And so I'm beginning to see here now, I did speak on this earlier, it looked like the rain was here to stay. But now as we crossed over the halfway mark, the rain has stopped. And I think this is what Just Boris and Elite Cassie have been waiting for, is the opportunity to jump onto the dry tyres. Now the track conditions, if we look here, are still in greasy, and the rain is looking to pick back up in about 15 minutes time. So it's a big gamble for a lot of these drivers. Just Boris now jumping into the pit lane. Cassie is staying out. Vermac now battling with the unlapping car, number 169 of Wadenator. VSR Twiglet and Oatsy round that top 5. I think all of these drivers are now waiting for their opportunity to jump onto dries, but that may not be the choice to be. It's a case now, a big gamble on the table here with 15 minutes until wet conditions strike again. We're still on a greasy track, 26 degrees on track, 28 ambient. Actually 20 ambient and 26 on track, I misread that. But rain reappearing in 15 minutes time. What is the play-by-play here? With about 9 minutes of wet conditions expected at the end of this race, is it a case where these drivers can manage on gradually drying conditions on those wet tyres and run the risk of burning them out, losing a lot of that vital tread needed for their efficiency in the wet, which will reappear by the end of this race? These are the questions you've got to ask yourself. VSR Grizz unlapping himself then from Elite Cassie. You can see that those new tyres are absolutely working in favour of Grizz at the moment. Leaping down through the chicane there. Brilliant, brilliant stuff. Hayden Puttock now out on track. Barreling down towards turn 1. Now makes his way into the top 5 there after his pit stop. That could be a few more positions under his belt by the end of this race. Puttock just looking at the moment to re-secure second. Could elevate that to first, depending on what his momentum's looking like. He's only 7 seconds away from the soon-to-be re-emerging race leader of Just Boris. He led every lap of this race going into that pit stop. So, on paper at least, could still be leading this race after everyone has taken their pit stop ahead of him. And speaking of, here's Elite Cassie leading the race for 1 lap and 1 lap only. The number 98 jumps into the pit lane 1 lap later than his leading rival, Just Boris. VSR Racing with a stop-go 30-second penalty puts an end to hopes of a top 20 finish. They're jumping into the pits to serve that now. You look around the field to see where our next fights are coming from. And try and stay on board with the next available battle as we recount the news in a moment's time. We're just looking to see, though, at this midway mark of the race, strategy has taken a stranglehold on competition. Drivers are spread around just too far away to be in striking distance. We'll stay on board, though, what is looking to be the emerging battle of 6th position. ETE Geels defending from the Blue Frog. Behind him in the number 61. Let's see if we can get the perspective of the attacking car of this duo then. We scroll around. See Cassie there lighting the rears up as he exits the pit lane. Let's go on board then with the Blue Frog as he fights with ETE Geels for sixth position. We are really struggling today for basic English. Really struggling. Cannot explain to you why or even how that's possible, given that usually I don't have any issues speaking my own language. But wow, we've just been tripping over words here. Right, nonetheless, into the news. And we've got 3 bits of news to recount today as we now look at the emerging fight for not only 6th, but beyond that, the fight for 4th. From the car at the back of the pack between ETE Geels, the Blue Frog, and Elite Cassie. So the first of our news comes from the British Touring Car Championship as One Motorsports confirms the re-emergence of the Honda Civic Type R FK2. That will be entering for the 2025 Quick Fit British Touring Car Championship after a 2-year hiatus. Elsewhere in the world of the WRC, the World Rally Drivers Alliance, or WRDA, speaks out against the FIA's decision to penalise Adrien Fourmeau for his words on a post-rally interview on WRC TV, finding the Frenchman €10,000 has sparked one of the earliest resurgences of a driver union event. WRDA is now speaking out and asking for clarity and transparency in the future from the FIA, as well as looking to bring an end to this, what they're claiming is a ridiculous penalty. And in Formula One news, in a recent interview, Mario Andretti said that Colton Herta, known for his endeavours in IndyCar and also with his brief stint with McLaren as a testing driver, would be a good bet for the first available seats at Andretti Cadillac ahead of their entry in a few years' time. They're soon to be the 11th team on the Formula One grid, backed by General Motors and powered by Cadillac. Colton Herta, of course, did testing for quite a few years with the McLaren F1 team and wowed expectations from the team then. Sadly, due to constraints with his super license, was never in line for the position straight up. The earliest available example that comes to mind at the moment would have been right around the time that Oscar Piastri was given his seat at McLaren. Many fans speculated over whether or not Colton Herta would line himself up against Lando Norris and the McLaren team in that coming season. Now it appears to be the case where the American could find his way in with an American team very, very shortly. So we stay on board at the moment. Blue Frog right alongside ETE Geels. We'll go on Geels' perspective very soon. This is now back in the stead for 5th position as Elite Cassie starts to open the taps there. He's starting to get away. All the meanwhile, Hayden Puttock is back up to those podium positions. There's only a single position away from breaking even. The 22 leads this race. That's Tyler Vermack. Just Boris in 2nd. Puttock in 3rd. Cassie 4th, Geels 5th, and we're watching the perspective of the car in 6th, Blue Frog. We'll see where the other battles are on track as well. As we take a look around, we did see fairly close stuff here, but this is only for unlapping. Say Chris MCK08 in the Porsche in 22nd position. Regent on a lonely drive in 9th. Tyler Vermack, now the race leader, comes into the pit. And now Just Boris retakes the race lead. What that's going to do for Hayden Puttock is put him right back on 2nd position. Right where he wanted to be here. So we bring the timer back up after our news segment to see how much longer of this race we have yet to go. 19 minutes left in this race, or just under 20. Hayden Puttock only 4 seconds from the lead here. The leading car with Just Boris now sporting the number 93 in memoriam to who Darren 93, who tragically passed away this week. Looking around the field, we're going to have to get back on board then very shortly. No, we will not, as we can now see VSR Twiglet versus VSR Otzi. This isn't the fight for 9th position. Actually now becomes 10th as their Tyler Vermack emerges from the pits. Only mere seconds ahead of this fight. Twiglet up into 10th. Otzi looking to switch in back round turn 1. Aston versus Lexus here in control of the last of those top 10 positions. What can VSR Twiglet do up against Otzi? We'll keep on board the perspective of the attacking of these two as they back up onto the car in 9th place. That's Tyler Vermack in the 22. Running deep, though, is Oatsy. We may very shortly have to go on board with VSR Twiglett. He's got a lot more momentum to play with here in his fight up against Tyler Vermack. Absolutely going to have to get on board with that then. We'll go on the perspective of the defending of the two. Tyler Vermack, of course, still riding on the highs of his success back in Australia in round 8 of the championship. Could be quite a far cry for position today. The South African really fighting tooth and nail in wet conditions to keep the Ferrari in line, but a differing strategy has put him down in 9th position right now. Oops, wrong driver. Looking for Tyler Vermack there. That was a mistake on our end. We see VSR Twiglett looking almost there for 9th position. Try and look on board with Vermack. We want to know what the strategy is here. You can see rain is starting to hit the track again. So was the choice by a few drivers to go on to maybe dry tyres the choice to make? Track is starting to return to its starting conditions. It's very difficult to see from the external cams, but going on board with either of these two will give you a very good perspective of that. But Twiglett looks to be fighting this all the way up to 9th position. The Lexus alongside the Ferrari relegates Vermack to 10th. Down into turn 1 we go. Tyler Vermack still clawing at the opportunity for a 9th position finish here. Far, far away from where he'd like to be with Ferrari, of course, based off that brilliant result he had back in the dry at Bathurst. It has not been his race to be here as the conditions start to worsen. This could swing back in his favour, but in parentheses, could. Looking around the field, Gilles now with a commanding 4th ahead of Blue Frog. BMW is still there, but just not close enough for striking distance anytime soon. Barreling around the penultimate corner, it would take quite the mistake here by Gilles to succumb to a back of the top 5 finish in this race. 16.5 minutes to go if he keeps things in the clear and narrow right now. He's got the pace to keep himself out of line. The number 61 barreling down of turn 14 and on his heels at the moment. In that last lap, was actually slower by only 0.02 of a second, so these two very evenly matched as far as it goes. Has had, for the most part, the pace to keep himself away from the Blue Frog, but Blue Frog now starting to mimic the line of that Mustang. You can see it's pushing the BMW to its absolute limits on the way through turn 1. 3 front-engine cars there, 3 different areas of the motorsports industry. AMG, BMW, and Ford Performance. Around the field here to see where our extra battles are coming from. We can see Oatsy's gaining on Wadenator right now. Wadenator, I must say, has had a remarkable drive. We want to go on board with Oatsy though, because right behind him is Grizz fighting for 12th position. What can Grizz do on his run down into turn 1? The McLaren has had a very ambitious send out of turn 14. Is eyeing up turn 1 here to the inside. The number 4 and the number 6. And looks to have that one bagged there. Very well done by VSR Grizz on his run out of turn 1 up into 12th. Can he surf that momentum to bring himself closer to the 11th position car of Wadenator? As you can see now having almost a quarter spin, you could say there. The back end was stepping away and the car itself was kind of just sliding on all 4 wheels down through turn 2. VSR Oatsy losing a lot of ground after that overtake. It really seems to have rattled that top's... Not rattled that top, rattled that number 6. The one main issue I take with Assetto Corsa Competizione is it's very difficult to tell exactly what tyres the drivers are on. We don't really have many graphics that can tell us that, at least not ones that I'm aware of. The game's never really been that transparent with this kind of information. Of course, you only have 2 tyre compounds really ever to play with. You have P0 dries and P0 wets. That's pretty much it. And this lack of variance on these tyres, it's commonplace in GT and endurance racing. You really only have 2 or 3 available compounds ever in a championship, and very slight variations on that, and then obviously the implications of tyre pressure and the way it's positioned in the suspension geometry of the car with toe, caster and camber. Beyond that, we just can't tell half the time. You have to look at the body language of the car. Wade Nate is jumping into the pit, so it was pretty clear to see that he was on dries and is now, with worsening conditions on track, going into the wets. You have to just sort of wait for moments like this, so it's very hard to tell who inside the top 10 and then by contrast in the top 5 is on wets and on dries. It's one of the things that holds this game up from being as good to broadcast on as even I dare say the F1 games. At least they're very concise with their information. Right now, the best we've got is track times, fastest time, number of laps covered, very basic information on these cars. It's no critique, of course. This game was never designed with this system in mind. This is effectively an add-on to even have a spectator mode programmed into this game. But it's, compared to especially single player, it's very bare bones. Very, very bare bones. Nonetheless, that's my rant about this game's questionable spectator mode over. So we now see the battle of the Aston Martins. Oatsy v Funky Fish here into the chicane we go. Funky Fish had a much better line than 982. And the number 6 in front of him. This is the fight for 12th position. Oatsy on will look to be possibly dry tyres. This is just based off of how little grip there is for him. Funky Fish looks to be on those wets. He's just got a lot more confidence in the 982s. You can see in the body language on both of those Astons the dramatic difference now as the track continues to worsen in the last 12 minutes of this race. What can Funky Fish do? Is he just going to buy his time and see what Oatsy does on the run into the pit lane, or is he going to stop waiting around? I think we've just gone with option B, as he's now eyeing up the inside. Has to back out though. So it's very hard to tell exactly what's gone on between these two. Could it just be a very high TC intervention that's keeping Oatsy in the clear and narrow at the moment? Could there be differences in setup between these two Aston Martins? You can see right now both of them are giving it absolutely hell's bells in that third sector. It was actually a slide out of turn 14 for Funky Fish. That's cancelled a lot of his momentum in what would have otherwise been an incredibly fast lap. He was half a second quicker than Oatsy on the last lap gone. But that big slide out of turn 14 just kicked any and all momentum, any all wind out of his sails to try and eye up a move into turn 1. He's going to have to wait ever so longer to try his luck on Oatsy. You do want to see what's going on in the front row, because the 93 and the 313 are very, very close right now. We do want to know what is the state of affairs going on with our two leading cars. We saw them fight like this last time around at the Circuit of the Americas. Admittedly, that was in the baking Texan heat. Now we are properly drenched in here in Magyarország, Hungary. We go barreling down into turn 3 for the first time since the race start, and with 10.5 minutes to go, we're in the battle for first. Now watching the perspective of the defending of the two, Just Boris. We go flying out of turn 4 into turn 5. You can see Hayden Puttock has had the comeback drive of his life in that Honda. We thought he was down and out when he got to the back of the top 5, but really all of that has just been fuel to the fire for the Honda, firing on all 6 cylinders now as we head into the closing act of this race. Very quickly catching up on the leading McLaren. The number 93 of Just Boris is really going to need to dig deep now. One final push to get him to the checkered flag. Could it be win number 7 for Just Boris? Could it be win number 2 for Hayden Puttock? 9 minutes and 45 seconds will decide their fate here in Hungaroring. We'll try and get the onboard as well of the attacking of the two. The Honda right on the trails here of the number 93. This is Hayden Puttock. Previously drove the number 99, now driving the number 313. You can see theorising in chat at the moment. One of our chatters, Christian Lebay, speculating that there could be a difference in tyre choice there. Very masterful switch back there by Just Boris. Really just sold him not only a dummy but the whole circus on the run down into turn 1. Round turn 2. So theorising in chat already, it could be the case that Boris is on dries and Putic is on wet. You can see it's a lot more of a hesitant drive by Just Boris, and moreover, a gap that was in at around 6 to 7 seconds at one point at the highest in this race has dropped down to net zero. Could suggest a big difference in strategy between these two. As we come into the final minutes of racing here, it's going to be a second to none defending performance by Just Boris that gets him this race win at the moment, because pace-wise, that Honda is all over him. Very difficult to tell at this time where this can go. The McLaren just putting itself dead centre of the road here, denying area off of that Honda. Momentum is absolutely paramount for the Honda as well. Its engine, though strong, is not the best on the field by a long shot. The best V6 going. You'd either be looking in the direction of fellow Japanese manufacturer Nissan, or you'd be looking over to Maranello for Ferrari with their V6 offering in the 296. Right now, though, Honda, try as it may, just cannot find the space up against McLaren. Hayden Putic looking for every available inch of the track. Where will he find himself then after turn 14? Just Boris is doing everything he can here to preserve his race lead against Hayden Putic. The fate hangs in the balance here on number of wins this championship, number 7 or number 2. That is the choice. Down towards turn 1. The Honda's still looking for it, but it's going to go around the outside. So he's goated the McLaren into defending the inside. That could give him a very good run down towards turn 2. You can see 8 cylinders, typically better than 6. The McLaren outgunning him in a straight line down towards turn 2. So a very bizarre performance that we're seeing right now. A very bizarre set of conditions as well. Had the race been an endurance format one, we could have absolutely seen both pit stops be used to great effect with a wet, dry, wet. But at the moment, when it's conditions that are wet, dry, wet, but only one pit stop really allowed, most drivers are just going to gun for the one pit stop and deal with the consequences in the last 10 minutes like we're seeing right now. Just Boris, I believe, did go for the dry tyres. That would explain the sudden drop in performance where that McLaren has really been struggling in worsening conditions. Hayden Putic, if he keeps fighting like this, even on those wets, is going to burn them out. So it is now the unstoppable force meets the immovable object in the fight of McLaren v Honda. Two firms that have partnered before to create some of the best racing cars of all time now find themselves on opposite ends of a proxy war here in the end of the Hungaroring round. 5 minutes left to go. We'll get a look at the overall runnings here. Of course, our front row, you can see clear as crystal, Just Boris and Hayden Putic fighting for the race lead here. ETE Gilles and Blue Frog 2.5 seconds apart from one another in that second row. Soviet Mario in the top 5. VSRP in 6th, Regent 7th, Tyler Vermack down to 8th, Elite Cassie down to 9th. VSR Otzi in 10th position. Funky Fish 11th in the pit lane at the moment, is losing out those positions very shortly. Chris will be up to 11th, Twiglet will be up to 12th, Wade Nater to 13th, so on and so forth. Grizz in 15th at the moment, Smiler in 16th, Taz in 17th, Antion 18th, Rafing 19th, and Aussie in 20th. Chris MCK in 21st, Hin in 22nd, Abok 23rd, VSR Dollar up in 24th, and Daily Boy in 25th. We've lost 5 drivers. Actually 4 drivers, I should say, over the course of this race. Started as 29 cars, now down to the lowly 25. See though, in the last 5 minutes, it's been a real reinvigorated drive by Just Boris. Hayden Putic tried as he may, couldn't find the space before. Right now, it's just stuck in the wake of that McLaren. Is finding every available inch of the track here to strike back on Just Boris. It may have just been the masterful performance he's been waiting for all race in that McLaren. So you can see now, Hayden Putic is properly struggling with front end grip on that Honda. Buckets of understeer in the middle sector as he comes out of turn 9. Round turn 10, now to turn 11. So could it have been the other way around, where they were both on maybe dry tyres, maybe even Putic was the one on dry tyre? I mean, it's really hard to tell. Really, really difficult to tell. I think, personally, it's the case where Boris has just stifled his performance there, backed up onto Puttock and burned his tyres out. It has definitely been a difference in tyre choice, but neither of these two are biting the bullet and looking to change things here in the last 3 minutes of racing left to go. They've only got about 2 more laps left in it before the checkered flag. It has been a brilliant battle for first at the moment. It could have just been the defensive performance he needed here to secure win number 9 for Just Boris. We'll be able to find out in the next 2 laps as the curtain starts to drop here. You can see there is next to no grip on the exit of turn 1. It slightly crests in the middle and there's this big pocket of water rushing down. The drivers have just nothing to play with there. They're having to cling to the inside curb to just give themselves that tiny extra bit of grip. Out through turn 2 into turn 3. And this is one of those terrifying icy zones that I was speaking about earlier in this race, and we're going to see it again on the right hand side up through turn 4. You can see where the front end snaps in. The car just has to wrestle itself back into a straight line before it spins out. Out through turn 5, now heading into turn 6 and 7. The battle for first is still on the table at the moment. It would take something quite major to bring it back into full swing, as there onto the grass after that curb at turn 7 is Hayden Puttock, slowly being knocked further and further back from the leading McLaren of Just Boris. You can see that's all but sealed the deal at the moment. The Honda, try as it may, just cannot keep pace with the McLaren in this final act of the race. It has been very brilliant between the pair of them. Masterful driving and performance here by both drivers in that front row. Looking further around the field to see where our next fights are coming from. It's half a second at the moment between Regent and Cassie. Cassie looking for 8th position off of Regent. The Ferrari looking to hold on and maybe try and surf this into a fight with the Ferrari ahead of him, the 22 of Tyler Vermack. But he's completely vulnerable and has run down turn 4 against Elite Cassie there. Swings it around the outside. Catches a little bit at the exit there. Regent's back into the fight for but a moment, but at turn 5, the deal is sealed. Elite Cassie up to 8th position. Funky Fish still fighting with Grizz. This is for 15th position as they rocket out of turn 11. Down towards turn 12. The conditions have just been a little too changeable for Aston Martin to properly flourish. I think it does take some proper monsoon level stuff to drop the needle on the Aston Martin's performance in the wet. It's been just a little too in the middle for the Aston. This might be the opportunity it needs here. The McLaren with floundering grip. Oh no, there's big contact between the pair of them. You can see heading out of turn 14. We're watching there just on the exit of turn 13 with Funky Fish rounding turn 14. You see the McLaren does run it wide. He runs it deep into turn 14, tries to swing back across. You can see there was a slight correction where it was already sliding and then just gets nicked across the back end by the Aston Martin. He's going to forfeit that position back to Grizz, so that's well done by Funky Fish. Good sportsmanship there. Has resolved the issue on track before it could be taken to the stewards. That's typically how most of the drivers prefer to do it, because going through that system, they don't want to really pick up any more penalty points than they have already. For most of the drivers on this grid already having at least 1 penalty point, they'd rather just keep themselves out of trouble and not get into the stewards' bad books towards the end of this season. We're going to go on board then with a very quickly closing gap here. Just Boris, as he rounds the corner here, turn 14 for the last time, wins with the number 93, getting down towards the line. It's been a brilliant performance by them as he heads down towards the line. Checkered flags are out. What a performance by Just Boris. Win number 7. Remarkable, remarkable stuff. The number 93 there, crossing the line. Hayden Puttock in second. They have shared in a brilliant, brilliant fight. Well done to the pair of them. What a front row that is. Very quickly secured race finish there. We're seeing now VSR Pete fight with Tyler Vermack all the way down to the line here. We're down through turn 11, side by side between the Ferrari and the McLaren as we head down towards turn 12. Vermack is up into 6th. Cassie looking to leap it down against the Ferrari to P6 himself. Drops down to 7th. That was brilliant between Cassie and Vermack. Cassie now ahead of Pete. Drops to P8. They're having to almost limp around the penultimate corner. That nearly kicked off to be red-hot stuff there to the end of this race. Very well done by Vermaak and Cassie for that final flourish between the pair of them. What a show. Looking around the field then, there was a very well done final performance by Cassie. Maybe not the result he was hunting on this race, but made the most of what he got. You see here, Rafing heading down to the line, finishes 19th. Oatsy heading to the line here, inside the top 10. We'll be happy with that result indeed. Get a full rundown of our results in a moment's time. But I would like to sort of say as well, I do apologise for a little bit of the confusion today. It's been a bit of an on and off day for me. So not being able to capture all of the action, it does weigh quite heavy on me sometimes that I'm not able to capture everything all at once. But there's your final result. Just Boris wins there. Win number 7. Now in the number 93. Dedicating that win to Hungaroring 93. Hayden Puttock with the fastest lap finishes second with Honda in the 313. ETE Giles in a mighty third for Ford in the number 57. The Blue Frog in 4th. Soviet Mario in 5th. So 2 Fords in the top 5. Who would have thought that? Tyler Vermaak in 6th. Elite Cassie in 7th. VSRP in 8th. Regent in 9th. And Oatsy inside that top 10. What an interesting race indeed. Maybe not as much drama as what we saw last week in Bathurst, but one definitely to remember, especially for that top 3. Just Boris, Hayden Puttock and ETE Giles makes that podium a very unique one indeed. Honda, Ford and McLaren. What a lineup. Well, that's all from us here on TRTN. A bit of a brief ending from us. And we do apologise for maybe some of the lacklustre performance out of us today. I know you have a standard now with us for performance. It was a bit of a spotty one for me today. I definitely could have done a little better to cover every ounce of action. But we're glad that you stuck around with us for this round. Hopefully, we'll be on the ball a little bit better in the next round. The Enduro round at Misano next Wednesday. We also have some announcements to make in regards to NLRL. Next weekend is a double event. We have the next round of the Endurance Series in Bathurst. We also have the start of the NLRL Sunday League Season 2 and what is looking to be a very exciting lineup indeed, featuring both championship rivals Carmelo Abate and Christian Lebay, also featuring returning drives from Melvin Milliston and Wesley Kuiper in what looks to be a very lively championship. We also have new signings from Ian Skeen and Till Schwering from Euro Titans and NLR. Plenty more to come from that. We also have Tyler Vermaak, one of the drivers of this race, finishing 6th today. Also will be competing with Ferrari in the number 5. But that's all from us today here on TRTN. Thank you so much for staying with us today. And good night. Another clarification as well is that you can find this available now on our YouTube channel, as we have now archived all of these streams. But that's all from us today. Good night.